Hi there. First of all, I apologize for the quality of the video and also for the lighting. I'm recording this with my cell phone. I'm not a YouTuber. I'm just doing this as an assignment for one of the lectures that I'm taking, one of the classes that I'm taking on the education of students with special educational needs. And so we have to do this learning journal, which is a really unique, strange for me. I've never seen this methodology before, but I also thought it was very interesting to document my learning and all my experiences in general related to the course material. And so I started doing the journal basically as like scientific literature, very rigid text, which following APA quotation and reference styles, and everything was very rigid, and I felt like it was taking way too much time from me, since I'm taking this lecture basically to expand my horizons, but I'm not gonna become a teacher. I'm in medical school, so I do have a different perspective. And also I was feeling the whole process was getting too troublesome and too time consuming. And since our professor gave us full liberty to do the journal in whichever way we preferred, I just decided to switch to this more informal way of doing things through a video, kind of like in a YouTube channel, but just to discuss things. And I felt like the perfect video to start was the one talking about my experience as a student with special educational needs. Myself, I'm a very neurodiverse student, and yeah, because like this text and special was getting way too long, and I've been working on it, and it's from the first module of the course, and I've been working on it since forever. So, and like I can't get it right, so I feel like doing this in a more spontaneous and unscripted way would be way much more effective, I guess, and I would convey what I really feel in a way much more personal manner. So yeah, basically I do have ADHD, which is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder, and I've known that since I was a child. Also, as a child, I've experienced not experienced, but I did have central auditory processing disorder, which means that I was able to hear things, but the processing in my brain, the transformation of auditory information into something that made sense, didn't happen effectively. So there was like a delay, or even like it wouldn't happen at all. So it was kind of as if I was deaf, but not really, because I was listening, but I couldn't understand things. And I also have generalized anxiety disorder, which is something that I think like more than anything I actually developed over the years, instead of like being inherently a part of the way my brain functions. But it is very like sometimes it can be very related to my learning needs and difficulties. So, and recently I found out that I am also dysgraphic and also probably dyslexic, actually, and something that I never knew. And I always struggle to write and spell, even though I speak multiple languages. Language learning is like a passion of mine, so I'm a polyglot, and I'm not bragging or anything. It's just like something I do for fun. Like some people watch TV, I learn languages for fun. So it's not that I'm like super smart, I'm super good with languages. It's just that I do spend a lot of time like doing that, and because I think it's fun. So and there is this like awkward and weird thing that happens, because in one side I can speak a bunch of languages, and on the other side I can't really write them, and even like it varies between from language to language. So like my main like native language, the language I speak the most, like used to speak the most at least, or like spoke the most growing up, is Portuguese, since I'm from Brazil, and so Portuguese orthography is super weird because we have many ways of writing the same sound, or we have so many ways of writing the same sound, but also, how can I put it? Like a lot of letters or letter combinations that can make like a bunch of different sounds. So also we have like accent marks, and the rules for them are they are a little bit arbitrary from a superficial point of view. So there is like an underlying explanation, which is basically etymological, so it comes from like how the word was originally in Latin. But learning that without knowing Latin, and even after I learned Latin, it's still like I still struggle with that because I have to process things too much. Like I have to think, oh, how would be that word? Oh, then that's why. So they came up with this like set of rules that you have to memorize, and I never did. I was never good at like accenting, and also never good at like writing in general in Portuguese, and also in English. Words, for instance, like through, tough, throughout, like they are a mess, and I know like the letters that should go in there, but yeah, like I can't really remember the proper order. And I realized that when I'm reading, I read pretty fast, but I don't read the entire word. I just recognize the word as if it was like a logograph, and which has led to some funny situations sometimes. For instance, I speak Italian, and once I read like piazza, which is like plaza, but I just like I looked at the word and I read pizza because like why not? And so and yeah, and people laugh and say, oh, Bruno must be hungry and everything, but it's just because like the shape of the word is very similar, so I kind of like my brain recognized the shape and like jumped straight to the word. So yeah, those are like that's what makes me neurodiverse. And going to my experience, so primary school was pretty much normal up until alphabetization, and in the beginning of like in the process when I was learning how to write, I didn't have really a problem like learning the letters per se, but my writing and my handwriting especially were terrible. I used to write like everything condensed in a single side of the paper, and my mom was used to joke like I can buy you other notebooks. You don't need to like keep saving so much space of like something like that. And then my teachers at the time, they approached my mom. They suggested me to see a psychopedagogist, and which was like good of them. But the psychopedagogist they suggested, I don't think she was the most effective one because she made some assumptions, and she put me through a type of treatment that I don't think was the most appropriate one for for like I don't want to say disease, but that's how it was saw. So for the disease and treatment, things like that. That's not what I needed. I just needed people trained for to teach me how to write and read with a different approach that was better suited for my needs. And so yeah, I did like a couple of years of treatment with her. Not like they didn't solve much, but after that, my teachers started to suspect that because also like when I started learning how to write, my speech got like really weird, and my comprehension, it was always like pretty bad, but it was getting worse, and so there was this suspicion that I was losing my hearing, or even like lack of attention in general. We didn't really quite know, so I did a bunch of medical tests. At that point, I did an electroencephalogram. I did audiometry tests, and so in the end, the conclusion. And back then, I was also learning Libras, which is like the Brazilian sign language, to communicate better. And although I can hear, like learning Libras actually, and it wasn't the intention, but it was actually a very important tool to make me communicate better in Portuguese, because I don't know, I think like since it's not communication and then like speech and hearing pathways, it's like more communication, and then motor. For speaking is also motor, but like a different motor. I wasn't not using my cranial nerves, so and then visual and processing, it kind of helped without that being the intention, learning libas. So but also I started doing I got diagnosed as both having ADHD and having central auditory processing disorder. So for the central auditory processing disorder, I basically I got treated for it. And there was like this really like 1 hour or 2 hour long sessions. I can't remember. I did every week with a speech doctor, and she basically she would like give me a bunch of words that I had to listen and then repeat, and then like we would change the order, a bunch of exercises that we did. And sometimes it was like in the beginning especially it was fun, then after like got boring, but in the end, like after kind of like 2 years, she said like I was all good, and in fact that like I improved a lot. And yeah, that it is a problem that I still feel today, kind of. And sometimes there is still a delay from when when I listen to something and when I actually understand it. I often say like someone says something to me and I say like huh, and then the person repeats, but like in the middle of uh, like when she's repeating it, I suddenly realize what she said like initially, and I answer. So yeah, like something like that, which is funny. But yeah, but like apart from that, like the central auditory processing disorder is gone. I'm still very much ADHD, and yeah, the treatment for that, and not treatment. There is treatment, but there is also like approach. And I think my parents were very wise. They didn't want to medicate me while I was a child, which I think was very important. And so they just like they would talk to my teachers, and the teachers would kind of like change a little bit the environment to suit my needs. For instance, they never let me sit like close to a window or close to the door. I would usually sit very close to their desk, and things like that. And they would pay like a special attention to me during the lecture to see if I was engaged, maybe ask me a question, or I don't know, ask me to do something and to kind of interact, which is but not in a way that would humiliate me, just in a way that would encourage me to participate. Most of my teachers, like, they were very good at that. I think I got very lucky. So yes, classes were mostly engaging. I did have some problems, for instance, with mathematics. I never paid attention at anything because for me, I think like logical subjects and yeah, and maths in general, it's like quite easy for me. And the way like a math class usually goes is that they explain the theory, and then in that part I follow, I understand. But then they go into like doing a bunch of examples and exercises. And since I've already understood the concept, that's when I lose focus because it's no longer engaging to me. But then after that, they go and explain another concept. But when that time comes, I'm already pretty much like very unfocused, and I'm not thinking about anything anymore. So yeah, I used to have that problem, and just got a private math tutor. She would explain it to me once, give me one exercise for me to solve, and not like solve it in front of me. And then I started acing at math again. And but in the end, like since I grew up and studied all my life in Brazil, we do have standardized testing there, which I despise. And I was also applying for some universities abroad, especially the US. So I was like studying for the SAT, and in Europe, which I took the like IMAT, which is the International Medical Admission Test by Cambridge, and so like for the University of Milan, but it's by Cambridge assessment. So yes, I had to study for I had to like study for a model that was not very compatible with my ADHD and my dysgraphia. So then I did like need to take ADHD medication, which I still do. And I can say like it is helpful. There is a lot of stigma around ADHD medication. I think I'm gonna make the whole different video to talk about that. It is useful. It's not like a magical pill that I take and makes me like into a super effective person, but yeah, it can help. But I think it shouldn't be necessary, to be honest, because it helps me to fit into a model that wasn't made for people like me. So yeah, while it has its place in an ideal world and an ideal educational system, it wouldn't be necessary at all. And after that, I got into university in Italy, and yeah, and which I still am, and I am struggling a little bit with that. Medical school is quite hard for everyone, and Italy is a very traditional place, and especially with university, the oldest university, like continuous university in the world, I believe, is in Italy. It's in Bologna. So yeah, there's like a lot of tradition around the way university is done there, which is not a negative thing at all, and heritage and those kinds of things they are very important. But still, I feel like the university system in Italy could be a little bit more modernized and to account for that. It's a process, and it's definitely happening. And through this course, I started like researching the university, and I found out they had the department for students with special educational needs, and I did manage to get now, like just recently, some extra support, which I think will help me a lot. But so it's a process, and no university is perfect, no professor is perfect. I don't blame anyone or like any institution for anything. I think if they have, I don't want to say failed me, but if they created obstacles for me unintentionally, it's not because they wanted to, it's just because that's the only way they knew how to work. And so yeah, that's why I think like the better solution initially is not changing the way we educate students, but changing the way we educate educators. And we have to re-socialize the ones that already exist and restructure the teaching of the ones which are like still training to become teachers. So yeah, that's it. And in general, I would say life as a neurodiverse person, it can be tough. But like normally it's not. We're not that different at all from other people or other students. And yeah, having a special educational need is not a burden. It's just a peculiarity, or maybe, I don't know, a feature. It's like having red hair or blue eyes, or so it's something more uncommon and something not the majority of the population has, but it just makes us different. It doesn't make us less than anything. And there are other overcompensations. Our brains are wired differently, so we think of things that other people wouldn't think. And in some ways, yeah, we have a whole different way of seeing the world. And so the only issue is that, yeah, not that everyone understands that. So there can be a little bit of like study and like career barriers, and a little bit of discrimination sometimes. But in general, it's like not different from living. I'm just human. No life is perfect, and I'm very glad for my life, and I'm very glad for my neurodiversity. It's what makes me me. So yeah, that's pretty much my experience. And I hope this new format is appropriate and that it works and that it brings a little bit of diversity into my learning journal. So it was definitely very fun to record this video and the ones I will be recording next. So that's all.